I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Engage those TARDIS engines, because the Doctor Who After Show is back! Here at AfterBuzz TV. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope you, I was going to make this whole thing about how you're choosing us over your Super Bowl Sunday, but the game's over, so my jokes are all
I
gone.
guess it is. It just ended.
But whether you're reeling from it, celebrating it, or forgot that it was even happening tonight, thank you guys for joining us here on AfterBuzz TV, because Doctor Who also happened today.
And Doctor Who's more important.
And I'm very excited. It is clearly more important.
I mean, obviously.
Who are we? I'm Zach Wilson. We got Rachel Goodman over to the end. And back this week, Adrian Snow.
Hello, everyone.
Adrian, thank you for being back.
Yeah.
We needed to talk to you.
I know. I'm so sorry.
Part of what was so crazy about last week's episode is that they seemed to just like drop it out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And so we weren't prepared. We didn't we were like, oh no, it's fine, Adrian. If you have to miss this one, that's probably fine. And then we're like, where's Adrian?
Yeah, no.
So before we dive into Praxeus, which is episode 6 of this season, and we are going to talk about it, I really want to get your thoughts on last week's episode.
Okay, I loved last week's episode because, I mean, I'm always here for some old school Who. So having the the time cops is what I always call them because I forget their names, but
the Jadoon. Who's rolled
having them come back as the space cops is always great to see. And then also just, when the villain, the villainous Time Lord of the story said faithful companion to the man before she killed him, I was like, oh shit, wait. Oh my God, the lady from Fleabag is totally like a Time Lord. That's all I had, right? Because that's how I know her. She's the funny lady from season 2 of Fleabag. And then I was like, wait a second. Wait, the doctor's really digging. Oh my God, yes. Oh, but what if she changes, like the master changed when she gets her essence back, and then she didn't, and then she rocked that African print, and I was like, I'm alive. Yes, the doctor was a black woman. Because, we be saving everyone's butt all the time, so it's about time that be shown to the world for one of the smartest beings.
I'm really excited
sci-fi.
to see what they do with it. The more since we take the episode right after it aired, at least here in the States.
Yeah.
But seeing the reactions over the course of the week, which everyone's just posting the spoilers everywhere.
Yeah.
But I really liked seeing how much people were excited by it.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's such a moment, just like Jodie, becoming the doctor was such a moment. I think we've all kind of been waiting just to see. I mean, even back when Peter Capaldi was the doctor and they had the crossover, a special event, and you saw one of the Time Lords go from being a white man to a black woman, and it was like, oh, that's like such a momentous thing because you don't see that. You don't see that, or even her little comment on being like, so much ego being a man. It was just hinting at that's always going to be a possibility for the doctor.
Yeah.
So to finally have it happen, even though we don't quite know what it is, and it does kind of suck that it is kind of like just this thing for an interaction through this doctor, and we probably won't get to continue on with her as the doctor, especially her being an older black woman as well, because you don't see older women either.
And that was what we were wondering last week, especially me, is that it seemed like this was some kind of alternate reality, and that we were working with multiple dimensions bleeding into each other.
I think it's more John Hurdy, where it is a possible doctor that's either from the future that doesn't remember this timeline, or a doctor from the past that's timeline is not remembered.
So that's the thing that Chibnall clarified this week that happened before after we taped last week's episode. Chibnall clarified that this doctor is not a parallel universe. He specifically singled that out as not a thing. So this is the doctor definitively from our universe. Yeah. We just don't know when she falls.
Yeah.
And I kept playing with it in my head like this. You could just put this, I guess, super in the future. It's either that or it's before Hartnell.
In the past.
Except that it doesn't quite track to be before Hartnell because the TARDIS already looks like a police box, but not a classic police box. Yeah. It looks like the Doctor's police box, which is a little bit different than the real thing. And what does that mean? And like we've seen the Doctor steal the TARDIS, like as William Hartnell's Doctor, so it can't be before that. My brain is broken still. It's a week later.
There's also that whole time in the 90s where there just was no Doctor Who on television, you guys.
And we talked about the fact that technically by the timeline of where they established that she comes into being where she comes to live in, was it Gloucester or wherever she was 1989, which was the period between the Doctor Who movie and New Who. Yeah. So it might be in there, but we've also seen we saw Paul McGann turn into John Hurt, and we saw John Hurt turn into Christopher Eccleston. So I don't know what we're doing here.
I don't care. Christian is going to live his life. Okay.
We're going to find out. But partially, I also wanted to bring this up because we got this like crazy bomb of information last week. And then now we're going to transition into this week's episode where we didn't even mention it.
We got a message.
In the slightest bit.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about that?
I was not impressed with this episode, to give my overall thought. My thing is that I get it. It's monster of the week, and there's always a new mission. But the fact that we had such a huge bomb dropped on us last week, I expected some mention. There didn't have to be much. We could have still had this mission and still had, the Doctor saving the world from plastic. But we could have at least had some kind of mention.
It almost seems like it was out of order. It seems like this episode should have come before last week's episode.
It reminds me of so many shows on Fox, where Fox is notorious for airing shows out of the episodes out of order from where they were written.
Yeah, because Fox don't. I mean, I can't curse on here, but they don't give a
They've done it with a number of different shows,
Fringe,
but in this case, there's too much going on for the Doctor internally right now for her to be. Yes, the world is in danger, and this episode dropped us right into the middle of the crisis instead of seeing it kick off. But even if we just seen her looking at a photo of Dr. Ruth, which is what we've decided to call her. I know people on the internet are saying Ruth Doctor, but Dr. Ruth is sitting right there, guys.
Yeah.
Come on,
take it. Dr. Ruth is awesome.
But Dr. Ruth,
the real Dr. Ruth.
We also don't have a number to apply to her, so we don't. That's all we've got.
Yeah.
But even if she'd just been looking at a picture of Dr. Ruth, to acknowledge that she should be heavily thinking about this bizarre anomaly in the universe.
Yeah.
That's all I really needed. And then crisis and the Doctor gets distracted. But to not even mention this thing that breaks the Doctor's reality feels odd.
Well, that, or if we go with the other bomb and talk about Jack, even if there had been something, not necessarily a picture of him, but at least somebody mentioning his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, just something. I just feel like there were two major...
Lone Cyberman or something,
There's just a lot in the air right now. And so what Praxis is, it's a very standalone episode, which Chibnall seems to very much prefer. And I have to be honest, this episode sort of is I've been a huge defender of Chibnall. He's done he's had a lot of great episodes in this season and a half so far. But he's starting to push me a little bit in that this episode is starting to, I know a lot of people complained about it last season, and I pushed back against them, but I feel like he is so determined to have a message that he has forgotten to build a story around those messages. Yeah.
And that's what annoyed me about this episode. It's not so much, I liked the idea of it. I thought it was very well written. The ending, however, reminded me of when they rebooted Star Trek with the 2009 movie, where they had Jake kind of, oh, well, we can't have an autopilot. I need to be here. And so it just reminded me of that moment at the beginning of 2009 Star Trek. So I was like, okay, this feels like it's been stolen. But overall, I did enjoy the plot. I enjoyed, and I enjoyed I enjoyed this idea of, okay, there's a virus spreading due to the insane amount of plastics, and I liked them calling attention to microplastics. I thought that was great. But I think the execution was, once again, I think it was Orphan 55, they just beat it over you. Oh, hey, guess what? We have a real problem on Earth. And it's okay, there was another way. You could have showed us this.
Well, the moment they started, once they found the plastic in the bird, I wrote, oh no, here we go. And I was like, and then before they even said it, I said microplastics, and they're like microplastics, and I was like, oh fuck. I'm sorry.
Does anyone else kind of? I think the other thing that bothered me is that every other character, like as she's explaining this, and she says pathogen. People really didn't know what a pathogen was.
Yeah,
I was like, what?
I don't buy
y'all
that.
thought I was crazy for thinking that sometimes they're just too dumb to be companions, but they'd be saying weird stuff, you guys. Like how do you not know what a pathogen is?
Anyone who went to high school should know what a pathogen is. That's why I'm like...
Anyone who's watched like 24 should know what a pathogen is.
Outbreak. The news. Like, we all know.
It's especially ironic for it to drop like this week because we all know what's going on right now with like we're literally in a world health crisis.
Yeah.
So the word pathogen is everywhere. So for Graham and Ryan to be like, what's a pathogen? It feels like you're pushing it a little bit.
And I think that we've gone so far from educational Who in the past 15 years. For him to kind of really push it for like the children friendly education of like what's a pathogen, just kind of is grating I think on older Whovians where it's just like we don't do this anymore.
This isn't a kids show anymore. Yeah. It's a family show.
Sure.
It's designed so that theoretically you should be able to watch it with like kids of all ages and adults, but it's not a kids show. And there's a difference. There's a difference between a kids show and a family show.
And then there was like kind of a weird commentary on bird flu as well, and then I was like, okay, this is just a lot.
I guess like
for me right now.
I don't want to be overly complainy about this, but I guess here's what I see in two different approaches to Doctor Who and telling a story with like politics in the back of it and the importance, because we also have a big plotline about scientists in this episode and their experimentation and the dangers of using people for experiments, even if it's intended for good. And it reminded me of a town called Mercy, which is an 11th Doctor episode. It's one where they go to the Old West and they find the alien doctor who was on the run and living there because he performed experiments on people to create cyborgs to help win a war. And that was such a tiny it was an important thread in that episode, but it was just a small piece of it. The story was just the Doctor and Amy and Rory show up in the Old West and then this town has lights. How does that work? And then it becomes an investigation and you only slowly find out about this other Doctor who and this gunman on the hill, and it just like builds slowly, and the political message behind it about essentially it's an allegory for Nazi scientists.
Eugenics.
Eugenics, yes, thank you. It was slow and it was threaded through, and it didn't feel overly important because there were other parts of it. It was also about protecting this town. It's just like this town is unsafe.
That's how sci-fi has worked for as long as sci-fi has been around. There's always an underlying message behind it, but you don't come out and go microplastics. And that message, we figure it out without you having to tell us exactly what the message is.
When you tell us what it is and you make it in the real world, you actually hurt your message by just like showing it to us point blank. It needs to be a little more subtle, or it doesn't feel like I'm watching a TV show anymore. It feels like I'm watching the news.
Even a movie like you mentioned, Outbreak, even something like that, it's different. Like it's just, if you're going to be direct about a message like that, there are just ways to show it in the subtext than just coming right out and like throwing it, like spelling it out so that, you know, oh, hey, in case you missed this, here is exactly what's going on and why it's wrong. And okay, like, yes, show us.
We could have figured it out without all that. And I mean, the alien thing growing on the people was gross enough. Like, I had a hard time.
I liked that effect, though.
It was a cool effect, and it had the correct effect, and that I was disgusted. I was like, this is not an easy episode for me to watch. But
it reminded me of Grayscale from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that's not easy. I don't like that kind of. But if they put it on an alien planet, and they talked about the pollution of that planet in its own way, you know, even with I'm already blanking on the episode from earlier where they're on the kind of like colonizing, or it ends up being Earth.
Yeah. Or from 55,
They kind of wrapped that in a way. It was still messagey, but not quite as messagey as us, where it's just like, okay, we get it.
This was very messagey, again, it put the message in front of the story.
Yeah.
And it needs to be the other way around. Like, if this had been an alien planet, then it would have been a little more subtle, where it's like, maybe it's not plastics, but it's an allegory for plastics, where it's like something that we think is normal, like, oh, you put gluten into into the air and it's infecting people, and we're like, well, that's just like fine, whatever. But to these people, it's the same as putting plastics into everything and getting the ocean sick, and there's wheat growing on the hills, and you're like, oh no.
Doctor Who has done that before. Doctor Who has touched on immigration without ever saying immigration before. It's done like it's touched on racial politics without ever saying anything racially. So they do it.
And I think that's a great point too, because I loved how they handled the relationship between Adam and Jake. That to me worked very well, and like I loved that chemistry, and it was just like it was very, very, I thought that's one of the reasons why I didn't completely dislike the episode, because they're like, these are just two characters we're meeting for the first time, and they were just
lived in.
Yeah.
I liked that too. I did not like. What are they trying to do to Ryan? They're trying to make him like a sex symbol or something. What's going on?
Also, that was a weird moment, because she was like her.
Friend was missing.
Ostensibly, her friend or her girlfriend. I couldn't tell how I was supposed to read their relationship.
I think friend.
But her friend just disappeared. She's like, ooh, muscles.
What are they doing? What are you doing right now, Doctor Who?
Come
what
on,
are you doing?
come on, woman. Like, worry about your friend.
It's also just the second time they've featured a younger black actress on this season, and immediately tried to make her kind of like a love interest or sexual chemistry between Ryan and her, and that it's just always weird for me whenever two black people are featured on a show. They must immediately have like a sexual interest. That's just weird. Okay, just put that out there. You don't have to do that. Okay.
That's fair. I mean, to the other side of it, it's just any young woman that's been on the show, which, like, I think it means that they've been casting more people of color this year.
Yeah, which is great. But it is weird when it's like two people of color in general. Yeah. All of a sudden they must have like a love relationship, and it's like, well, you casted tons of people of the same race who are not people of color, and they don't have to immediately fall in love. So,
I would also
chemistry.
Just love for anyone to stick around long enough for him to have an arc with them, even if they are interested, like, regardless of,
or just don't do it.
So far this season, we have not, and we're 6 episodes in, we have not seen any character development for any of our 3 companions.
Yeah.
Not even like a little bit. Like, Yaz is maybe getting in trouble at work over her travels, but that was in the premiere and hasn't been mentioned since. They mentioned that she is on sabbatical tonight, and that was it. That was all we got.
There's too many, I think, message episodes. And I think what past showrunners have done is they've done a good job of doing the messagey episodes while also still including the backstory and the overall arc of the characters, even in those storylines. And it's like, once they have to interact with other people, it's like they are no longer have their own personality. The most personal moment I saw was Graham reflecting briefly on his wife when Jake was talking about, you don't know how hard it is to be with somebody that's better than you, or something like that.
And I think too that we're seeing more character development with the one-off characters we're seeing. We're getting really fleshed out backstories with them, but meanwhile, Yaz, Ryan, even Graham, like, we're just not getting, I'm not really getting a lot with them, and it's just harder to really feel a deeper connection because of that. I feel like the Doctor, though, especially last episode, we are getting a little bit more with her. But still,
a little bit.
Nothing nowhere near on the level where it would make it more interesting if we were, but at least it was something.
Yeah, I know they focused on them a lot last year, but that doesn't mean you have to stop just because you focused on them so much last year.
But that's also, that's Doctor Who. Like, if Doctor Who, the Doctor whose seasons are really about the companions. When you get down to it, yes, the Doctor has their overarching, but like when I think about like, which seasons stand out to me, it's like I remember like Amy and Rory's seasons and what they were dealing with when they were looking for the Rose's story, like her romance with the Doctor, Martha's like her back and forth with the Doctor, whether it's a romance or it's a friendship, and they're working out their feeling. Donna and the Doctor building their friendship. Like I remember those arcs more than I remember
the one-offs.
Like the one-offs or what the Doctor is doing.
Except for the Ood.
But even the Ood was like part of like Donna's story as well.
And
like,
they keep coming back, and you know they develop them. We don't really get, if we have characters like Adam or Jake. This is probably the last time we ever see any of them.
Oh yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
And like I don't need them back. Like, so I'd rather they spent that time building out Yaz and Ryan's dynamic. Whether it's like they're going to be a great pair of friends, or there's going to be romance, or they're going to get to romance and then be like, nah.
Yeah.
Like build that instead of building these characters that we'll forget about.
Yeah.
Now, we kind of have a question that kind of speaks to what we've been talking about. Dorothy Banks says, would it be better if it went back to 12 episodes over 10?
I don't know that it would. I think it's because right now, I don't think it's a lack of episodes. I think Chibnall's resistant to serialized storytelling.
I think it could be a little bit of both. I think if he went back to 12 episodes, then maybe he would slow down a bit, because sometimes it's just like we clip through all these episodes, and when you have 12 episodes, having these, one-off kind of mystery of the week episodes makes sense. But when you have a shorter one, we don't really have time for that or care for that, so you need to focus on serialized. I was also going to say that just the mystery overall with Chibnall has just been bad, which is weird because he definitely was the showrunner of Broadchurch, right? But like the mysteries are just always like halfway through, it takes so long for them to get to what the mystery is supposed to be that I stop caring.
But that's the thing. It's like we're not threading the timeless child in this episode.
Yeah.
Like if this was going to lead us there, like the timeless child has been mentioned now in what, 2 episodes so far? Maybe 3. Did we even get a mention of it last week? I don't think so.
I just feel like when you said the thread, that's what I feel is really lacking here. They could have had the one-off episodes. They could have had that if they still had hints of what like ties. And that's like, shows do that all the time where it's like, okay, well this week, like even the beginning of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., there was still something that was threaded through, even if it was like an episode focusing on something different every week.
And it's look at like the past of this show. Look at how many times you hear about the Master during the Tenant and
dude, how many times did we see that crack first season of Matt Smith?
Yes.
Like every episode we saw the crack,
and
which sounds weird taken out of context. You know what I'm talking about, all you Whovians.
I was all about that crack.
And that's gonna be the sound clip.
But yes, but also even just the silence as a thing in that first episode of Matt Smith's thing, we had Prisoner Zero, just like dropping silence, Doctor, silence will fall, and then he disappears, and we don't know about the silence like for a while,
for years.
But it's there, like, and we can see it, and the crack keeps us going, and it's those little things. That's all it needs is a little thing. But we didn't see that last season, and we're not seeing it this year. We're just seeing like the mentions of it, and then we forget. And by the time you bring it back up, it's such ancient history.
It's like, oh yeah. And did we have anything with digital computer stuff? Not just scientists and plastics.
Not this week.
No.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say too is with less episodes, you would think they would get rid of episodes like this.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing, is that, if they had more, they'd have more time
to do
for
it.
this.
And that's exactly what I meant. Like if you have 12, you can do these episodes as long as you're still also keeping your through line throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the part of this is, I'm going to just drop it now. Hit that news button, Jonathan, if you could, please. Because it's relevant here, because we were asking for these serialized things, and one of the other things that Chibnall said this week is Jack will not be back this season.
What?
I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. But he said that Captain Jack will not return this season.
What's John Barrowman doing right now? Okay,
Maybe
Arrow's done. He's not on Broadway right now. I know. What you doing right now, John?
I don't think it's on him. I think it was because apparently when Chibnall called John, like this is how Barrowman talks about it. He's like, I got a call from my agent that Chris Chibnall wants to talk to you, and he's like, because apparently John Barrowman's been campaigning to get back on the show for a while, and he was like, oh, and he got really excited and like took the call, and then he's like, yes, absolutely, yes. So John Barrowman, super down, super excited about it. But Chris Chibnall, I guess, is maybe he's playing a long game here or whatever.
Can't play
he
too
said
long,
that,
my friend. Okay.
Yeah. And I part of me hopes it's a misdirect, and he's just like, oh, he's not coming back this season. And then he comes back in the finale. But that's literally what he said was he will not be back this season. So, I don't know.
It's just asking a lot. You ask us to take a year off. We had no Doctor Who for a year. And then you're putting us through these message episodes, okay? Listen. This is not early 90s black cinema, okay? Not everything has to be a message.
And I don't want to... This whole podcast has been complainy, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I want to be able to talk more in, like, happy tones about Doctor Who, but this episode just didn't have a lot that I loved. Part of me, for a moment, was like, those... When you see the aliens that have the shell stuff on their face, I was like... This looks a little bit like Tim Shaw's face. What we doing here? But then they're like, no, that's not it at all.
No, separate.
Yeah. I did like the stethoscope making an appearance. The doctor's stethoscope.
I mean, the doctor should have a stethoscope.
Always.
It's important. Do you guys have any other thoughts on Praxeus?
I thought my mind kind of blew when the doctor was doing her voiceover and said the third decade of the 21st century. And I was like, huh, what? Oh, my God. Oh, my God. We are in the third decade of the 21st century. But that's it. That's all I got.
Don't say that. I feel so old.
Yeah.
I appreciated the twist at the end with Suki. I didn't actually expect that, so.
Yeah, that was cool to see.
Yeah.
That was cool to see too.
Yeah, I mean,
and that she was an alien, but they didn't specify what type of aliens they were, right?
No, I don't think so.
No, they didn't say, and they're just very humanoid,
which is rare.
Which is rare. I mean, it's something that Doctor Who sort of goes back and forth on. Like a lot of what they've established towards like the future of the Whoniverse is that they are humans who have like crossbred with other aliens, and that's why they look so human. But this is obviously modern aliens that look identical to humans.
2020.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's about all I got.
Yeah. All right. So with that, I think we should jump into our segment, Who's Who on Who?
Alrighty, guys.
Adrian, take it away.
So we had a few little people pop into the show today. Not nearly as famous as some of the people that came in those first two episodes. But first off, we had Matthew Mcnulty. He's known for The Terror, Versailles, and if you're a nerd like me, The Misfits. He came on for like the last season or two of The Misfits, where he was able to absorb other people's powers and had a weird affair with some people, and then I think maybe died a violent death, because most of them did. Spoilers. And then we also had Warren Brown as Jake. You know him from Luther, Strike Back, and X Company. And then Johanna Borja, who played Gabriella, she's kind of new on the scene. So this is like one of her first bigger roles, but she's also in Traces and a short film called Fright Bites. So outside of that, we had a very like blink and you miss it reference to the Autons of the Nastine consciousness. I always think of how Tennant said it and how the one I didn't like very much, Christopher Eccleston said it.
Yes, plastic.
We know them mainly from, if you're a new season or a new series Who, you know them from the first episode, Rose, where they went and attacked Rose, and that's how she was introduced to the Doctor.
And their hands break off, and they had guns in their hands.
Yes, but before then, they kind of weren't necessarily that fancy, but they moved. They appeared in Terror of the Autons with the Pertwee. Is that how you say it? Pertwee?
John Pertwee?
Yeah. I always thought it was Pertwee. Years. And so, yeah, they're living plastic. And it would have been really cool if it had been them. Just saying.
I want to see these people fight the living plastic.
Yes.
Somehow.
Give me that. That would make more sense for the living plastic to come and be like, well, you got so much plastic, we might as well just turn all of you into plastic. That would be cool. They link up with the Cybermen, take these notes, and then come and pay me.
I also feel like I would be remiss without pointing out that there's a character named Zach Olsen. Zach Wilson over here is like, all right, I'm intrigued. Who's this person? Oh, he's dead.
There's also an improv comedian named Zach Olsen. I was like, oh, funny.
Well, fine. There's somebody with a closer name. I wanted it to be me, but also he exploded.
He did explode immediately after saying his name.
Sorry, Zach. All right, guys. Before we close out, let's do some predictions.
Yes.
What we're looking at next week. And I think what do you have? 4 episodes left this season?
4 total.
They're already teasing in the post show the 2-part finale.
Yeah.
So we can at least look forward to the 2 last episodes of the season being connected in some way.
Yeah.
Rachel, what are you thinking?
I'm gonna say that we get Jack back. I think that it was a misdirect. I think we're gonna see him for next episode in particular. We saw the previews about it looked like a boogeyman. Like that's kind of what they were advertising. So I feel like it's gonna be another one-off, and that we're not really gonna get that thread. And I also feel like we're gonna get more of a haunting kind of aspect to this. Yeah.
I'm always here for the scary Doctor Who episodes. I always think they do a good job with that. So hopefully Chris can pull it off. Second year in a row. I don't remember his from last year, but I remember some scary ones. I hope that we don't spend too much time on these one-off mystery episodes that don't seem to work for any of the fans, and get back to some of the Doctor Who lore. Just because you only got 10 episodes, just give us what we want.
Yeah, I mean, next week we're looking at a boogeyman of some kind, or bogeyman, as apparently the British call the creature. The bogeyman isn't real. That's what I heard in that preview. So yeah, I mean, it looks like I hope it's it's real creepy.
Yeah,
and it gives me nightmares. Give me some nightmares, Chibnall. I haven't had nightmares in a while. Why am I asking for that? That's not a good thing. All right, that's gonna do it here at AfterBuzz TV for the. Was that just a...
Yeah.
It's freaking me out, Jonathan. All right, guys, this has been the Doctor Who After Show here at AfterBuzz TV. Thank you so much for geeking out with us tonight. I've been Zach Wilson. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @ThatZachWilson. You can also check out my other podcast, Ships in the Night, where we take 2 characters from different universes and we ship them together and make a little love triangles. Adrian was there last week. We did Luigi and Supergirl was one of them.
It's not a PG episode. So
no, it's very much R-rated, X-rated maybe. Check it, but it's all audio, so don't sweat it. That's called Ships in the Night, wherever you get your podcasts. Adrian, where can people find you?
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Miss Adrian Snow. You can also catch me on the Magicians After Show on Thursdays, and then you can catch me and Rachel on the Outlander After Show in 2 weeks on Sundays right after this. And lastly, you can catch me on the season premiere of Kidding on February 9th. And if you're an LA local, you can catch me on my improv show that I'm currently running starting tomorrow, February 3rd, at the Clubhouse Church Improv. That's it.
And I'm Rachel Goodman. You can find me on Twitter at Rach Goodman or on my author Instagram account at Rachel Radner Author. You can also find me on the Stumptown, the Young and the Restless, Outlander, and I think, and the Curb Your Enthusiasm panels. So if you're a fan of any of those shows, and on my readers group on Facebook at Rachel Radner.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. This has been the Doctor Who After Show. Thanks for geeking out with us.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.